Welcome back, everybody. Today's video is going to be an update on my favorite hero in the game of Dota 2 as a whole, and that is my boy Slark. I've made guides on him in the past, but I would like to just talk to you guys under the new lens that I'm kind of seeing the game about Slark and how I view this hero in the current meta, but also just as a whole. So let's go ahead and get started. And hope you guys enjoy listening to me nerd out about Slark. The reasons why Slark are my favorite hero is first and foremost is that he has multiple forms of escape, which also usually double as forms of aggression. Pounce can be escape and aggression. Dark Pack, same thing. Ultimate, same thing. He has high margin for error, where if he does mess up one of his skills, he'll usually be able to use the other ones in order to live. So you often don't die as a punishment for misutilizing your skills, but the fact that he's a map control hero that relies on those skills being available in order to use map control, and he's also a hero in team fights that needs to hit people a bunch with essence shift in order to have impact. If you're using your skills just to survive, then you're just going to kind of be ignorable in the game and lack impact. So what I like about him is he allows you to make a lot of mistakes. They'll usually end up losing you the game or team fights, but you're still alive and you get a lot of opportunities to learn from these mistakes, and it allows you to really hone this over time. What I also like about Slark is the fact that he's an independent carry, that because of his survivability skills, he's able to usually fend for himself by dodging ganks with those, but also because of the fact that his ultimate tells you when you're in vision, you can easily deward the opponent, knowing when they see you, making it so you can avoid ganks all on your own, not having to ping your supports to ward for you. So what makes Slark Slark, right? What makes this hero's identity what it is? Well, in my words, Slark is a vision-based hero. He has full 1800 day vision and full 1800 night vision. One of the few heroes in Dota that has 1800 night vision. This, coupled with the fact that he knows when an enemy sees him, he can theoretically take any fight on his own terms and should never be at the informational disadvantage. So picking and choosing when you show on the map, picking and choosing which fights you take are a really important part of Dota as a whole, and Slark really embodies these aspects of the game. Slark is a hero that lacks burst damage, but he builds damage over the course of fights through rest and shift, landing pounces and hitting the opponent. This, coupled with the fact that his ult provides him regen, and so when he uses it or when he disengages and re-engages from the fights, he's able to abuse more than his overall health pool, similar to a hero like Morphling in this case. That means that he's all about these long drawn out fights and identifying exactly how much he can use his health pool to go as low as possible just to reset and make it so the opponent runs out of resources. So because Slark has such built-in sustain, he can use that on the map when it comes to consistent pressure, and he can use that in team fights when it comes to the fact that he has low cooldown spells where his spells will become available before most of the opponents. So forcing everybody to cast their spells, Slark included, and then forcing the fight afterwards by chasing them down, that's what Slark is all about. And because of the fact that Slark is so survivable, and sometimes it is really difficult to land those right clicks because the opponent has really good kiting heroes or they built a bunch of kiting items, sometimes it is Slark's job to just be a meat shield for his team. Sometimes it is just provide vision, utilizing all the vision that you have, letting your team have all the information they need, and tank just enough spells to survive, but make it so that the opponent is now overly committed with long cooldowns on cooldown. So that means that patience on Slark is key, but knowing exactly when to go and not hesitating when it happens is part of what makes this hero such a roller coaster. You have to be bold to a point where you're willing to push yourself. You're willing to push those limits. You think you're going to survive, fucking go for it. Because this is a hero similar to Morph as well in this regard, that if you're not willing to push your limits, if you're not willing to go out there and die because there were 4 different buttons you could have pressed to live and you panicked and didn't press any of them and then you died, then you're not truly experiencing Slark. So, are you guys with me? Have you buckled in? So let's go ahead and start talking about the mechanics of Slark. So, the first and absolutely essential hotkey that you must use is directional move. Now, I use Alt plus A for it, but you're welcome to use whatever you want. If you use Alt as your hotkey for directional move, make sure that Pounce has also Alt plus whatever key you plan to use for it so that you'll be able to press both at the same time. What directional move does is that if I hold the hotkey for directional move and then I right click, regardless of terrain, my hero will face that direction. See, he will face this direction no matter what. He will not try to run around the terrain. This is essential when the opponent is like over a cliff and I'm like right here and I want to pounce them. If I click here, then my hero is going to run like this. But if I directional move and then pounce him, I will land it. So whenever the opponent's trying to juke you through trees, whenever they're trying to give you the runaround of like a cliff like this, Directional move will be your best friend when it comes to landing these pounces. You should never play this hero without directional move. If you need to, go into a private lobby and just practice using it. You can even practice it for double pouncing, where you have the second pounce come in because you have to wait for your Slark to turn a little bit, right? So there's a lot of use of directional move on Slark, and if you don't have it, you will be missing some crucial pounces at any stage of the game. When we talk about Dark Pact, just remember that it is a strong dispel. If it says that it is dispellable, or it is dispellable by only strong dispels, that means that Dark Pact removes it. So if you check out Viper Strike, it says cannot be dispelled. So if you want to get to know Slark and his interaction of Dark Pact with all the abilities in the game, then this is how you know. If it can be dispelled, or it's dispellable only by a strong dispel, then Slark will be able to get rid of it. I want you guys to think of your Dark Pact, since it has a 1.5 second delay and a 1 second trigger time of continuous dispelling. I want you guys to think of it as 2.5 seconds when you enter the fight, unless you're against a hero like Doom with a non-dispellable spell, as time to gauge whether or not it's a good fight, whether you're going to commit with your pounce. Think of your Dark Pact as, testing the waters. I'm walking out there, I'm in lane, I'm ready to go on them. Am I going to pounce when I pact, or am I going to wait afterwards and maybe even end up pouncing away or ulting right immediately after? So because of the way my pact works, I'll usually use it like this, and then I'll look to pounce away at the end of it, making sure I don't get disabled. If you do this, let the pact go off and then pounce, that 0.1 seconds where you're not invulnerable to stuns is when you're going to die on Slark. So think of your Dark Pact that way and use the last 0.2, 0.3 seconds to either use your ultimate, use your pounce, use your BKB, or whatever form of survivability, your shard that you're needing to utilize that game. What's really important about Slark's pounce is that it goes through BKB. Now, it doesn't actually latch the enemy, so when they're BKB'd, they can just walk away from it. But since your pounce steals Essence Shift, you can still use it on BKB targets, and it also allows you to close the gap. Because in the past, if they were BKB'd, you'd pounce through them. So now it's even better against BKB because you still steal the 3 Essence Shift stacks, and you can also catch up to them when they're BKB'd. So I can be right here, and I can just start hitting them now. So don't be afraid to pounce BKB targets, because that's 9 agility, 9 attack speed, and it's also stealing their stats. So if you have no better use for pounce at the time, and it's also going to snowball your future Essence Shifts even harder, don't be afraid to pounce BKB targets. The only ways out of pounce are Force Staff, BKB, Wind Waker, and a well-placed Ironwood branch. As you can see, if done properly, if placed between you and the middle of the pounce, it'll push you slightly out of the pounce, thus breaking the leash. So something you can do in the mid-game, kind of cute if you're a hero that struggles to survive against the pounce, has a mobility spell that can get away from Slark. Once he utilizes it, then feel free to carry a branch around with you and execute these high tier plays. I've seen some of these 13k Morphling players use it, for instance. So, Slark's Essence Shift. Slark is entirely built around this skill. Basically, how much damage he does is how many stacks of Essence Shift that he has. So when you think of your itemization, when you think of your approach to team fights, your impact will be all about how many times you've hit them, how many times you've pounced them. So in regards to whether or not you're going to be a meat shield, or whether or not you're going to be the guy that solo kills everybody and snowballs the fight, think about how you're going to start hitting them, what items they have that make it difficult for you to hit them. Do you need to lock them down in order to hit them? Do you need to have more mobility in order to hit them, like an extra blink dagger in the mid to late game? Do you need to have a refresher so that you can BKB ult twice? What is it that's going to allow you to hit them? Do you need to hit them harder? Do you need to hit them faster? Do you need a moon shard? Do you need a basher? These are the types of things that Essence Shift makes you think about. So Essence Shift is the ability that conceptualizes your entire team fight, and you want to be thinking about exactly what it's going to do for you in regards to how many times you have to hit the opponent, how tanky are they, how mobile are they. If you can hit them, you're winning on Slark. But if you spend the entire beginning of the fight hitting the guy that's super tanky and the rest of your team is dying at that point, that's not good. But anytime you can spend hitting tanky guys that the fight is not going on is just bread and butter of Slark. That is going to win you fights because you have an extra 10, 20 Essence Shift stacks going into the actual engagement. In regards to Depth Shroud, it is 75 seconds as opposed to the 45 seconds of your regular ultimate. So I'll use my ultimate first if it's only for my hero, because not only is it a much shorter cooldown and I might be able to use it twice in one fight, but also because Depth Shroud can be used on any of my teammates, not just myself. So whenever I am in fights, unless I'm covering myself and another person in the same area, I'm going to use Depth Shroud second. So really think of it as your contingency button, your oh shit button once your ultimate has already been used, or if one of your teammates is getting initiated onto and you can save them. Something important to note is that just because Slark's Shadow Dance gives you 120 HP per second, it does not mean that it should be used only when you are low. You want to conceptualize this skill by saying, how much damage can they do to me in like their disables before I'm able, like once Dark Pact ends, once Pounce ends, whatever, how much damage can they do to me before I'll be able to cast a BKB, before I'll be able to cast my ultimate? And that's how much HP you need to use your ulti at. So games where you're against Doom, you're against Faceless Void Chrono, you're against Wyvern Curse, you're against Orchid and you don't have a BKB yet, you might need to ult right at the start of the fight. But knowing what that threshold is, whether it's 400 HP or whether it's 100% HP, is part of what makes pushing limits on Slark one of the hardest things, because your Shadow Dance should be used at highly varied times based on the opponent's ability to burst you from any given health threshold. So we've talked a lot about Slark, but now after conceptualizing him, we're going to give you a couple replays from 7.35B where I'm just going to talk about what makes this hero tick, how you want to be approaching this hero in the early to mid game predominantly, and basically just talking about what makes this hero successful in lanes and the different approaches that you can take. So Slark is a snowball hero through and through. Honestly, when Slark's good, he doesn't necessarily need to snowball, which we're going to talk about in the second replay. But in this first replay, I want to show you guys everything it takes in lane and carrying from the lane for you to properly snowball a Slark game and basically turn this into like a 20-30 minute free win. For me, if you're a really good Slark player, this will happen once every 5, maybe 10 games, where you just get a free win because you single-handedly just take over the entire map. So when it comes to starting items, I used to think Stick on Slark was bad because he doesn't really utilize all that much mana until he starts farming with Dark Pact, level 1. I mean, he doesn't use much mana level 1. But what I've realized about Stick is it allows you to play the sustain game. So if the opponent has a lot of spells that they can just chuck at you, then Stick level 1 basically says, I can be regenning up to full HP and have Stick charges, so it basically increases your health pool. And all what Slark does when he's fighting in lane is that every time you hit them with Essence Shift, you're getting 3 agility, which is half an armor, and they're losing armor, they're losing HP. So if you have full HP, they burst you down with all their spells, but you're still hitting them. Think about over time, just like kind of Timbersaw's reactive armor, you're gonna get effective HP, like because you're gaining armor and they're losing damage. So having that extra like 150 HP from the Stick and being able to finish them off, you'll end up fighting a lot as Slark, where you're like 100 HP, sticking back up to 250, and they're clicking you thinking they'll be able to finish you off, but then it's too late. So those are the situations that you're looking for if you think that's going to happen in the lane with Stick, because you need to be able to tank through their spells and hit them. So keep in mind that Slark's either playing super chill or super aggressive, and Stick allows for both of those, but think of that as the aggressive version. And if you aren't against a lane that casts a lot of spells, then I'll just go for the stat items like most other agility carries. So one thing that's really important about Slark is if you're not getting hit by the enemy 4 position, Batrider's not here yet, you need to utilize the threat of your Essence Shift to zone people away from creeps. Notice how I just walk at them, so that allows me to turn around and get a couple denies, right? And so that little posture, very similar to like Ursa and such. Notice how instead of trying to go for the deny on the range creep, I'm just hitting him. A lot of carry players will just go for that deny on the range creep, or they'll just try to fight the guy for the deny. I don't mind if I push the wave forward if I'm establishing dominance with Essence Shift, right? Notice how the momentum of the lane has already been established, and since Slark is so strong level 1, unless he's getting hit by a 4 position with nukes like Rubik or Hoodwink, as long as the 4 position's not doing that to you, almost every lane Slark can do this. Just be careful that if they have a lot of level 1 bursts like Centaur Stomp into a Hoodwink Q, then you can't do this. So bear in mind that as long as they can't do so much damage to you that you can't hit them, you can play like this, right? So in these type of lanes, I treat every range creep as like a bait. So notice how here, instead of going for the deny, I bait him to go for the range. I hit him a bunch. He wants to back off, and I just turn around and deny it. If he commits, then I hit him 2 or 3 more times and do a bunch of damage. So that's like a pretty common theme, is using the range creeps as bait. In lanes where I think I'll be able to hit them a lot, I go for the Wraith Band. If I don't think I'm going to be able to hit them a lot like this, I don't go for the full Wraith Band. That's what the Wraith Band is for. Notice how I'm zoning them again. Each and every creep I walk forward, turn around and deny it. Walk forward, turn around and deny it. Remember, guys, this is when you're in an advantageous lane as Slark, and it's absolutely essential that you pummel the offlaner into the fucking ground, which is going to allow you to snowball the entire game. So this is an example where I went on them. They did way more damage to me than I expected. But at the same time, look at Bat Rider's health and mana now. So if we can do that where we don't give them a kill in the near future and we set them up to basically like force them to use all their health and mana to defend themselves, eventually Slark will win this because he has pretty high base HP regen. And because he has stick, like he's never going to run out of mana unless he's spamming Pact, which you really shouldn't be because it's so useless level 1 and still kind of useless level 2. So the posturing continues. I went for boots because of the fact that Bat Rider is such a chase-heavy 4. Like, I'm either underneath him taking a ton of damage or I'm not taking any at all. So that's why I went for boots in this lane. If they're heroes that are going to hit you with damage from no matter where, then I'll usually go for, like, stat items like the Glove of Haste and the Band of Elven Skin towards treads. Fishing for kills, no big deal. It's okay to fish. If you miss your pounce, it's fine. I don't generally lead off with the pounce. But since the offlaner wasn't near me there, I was fine to just pounce right away. So in this lane, I go for raindrops and full stats, plus boots. So the reason why is you've seen what's happening here. I go on them, they defend themselves with spells. So I need boots to be able to go on them, and then I need these items to tank through their spells, and their heroes don't right-click trade all that well. Like, unless Bat Rider's casting spells, unless Void Spirit's casting spells, they don't really trade with you. If it's a hero that's going to hit you a lot, like Slardar, then this is not a good mentality. You'll want to just, like, go Wraithband straight treads, or just straight treads as a trading item. But the raindrops plus stat items is when you think that you can go on them and they have to dissuade you by pelting you with spells. I will not go raindrop if I'm just trying to sustain through the lane, which you're going to see in the next replay. People I remember in my stream were asking me why I didn't go for raindrops in the next one. So remember, I will only go raindrops if it allows me to then be aggressive on Slark. So Slark's weakest point in lane is level 4 and 5 because his skills don't really get better in lane. Like, Dark Pact's not a skill he wants to be using before 6 because he's literally killing himself. And then, so this is the stage of the game where we have to be wary that, like, a lot of the offlaners are getting more powerful. So if we haven't established dominance like we have already by this point, then you're going to start playing passively. But when you've established dominance like this on Slark, like, you'll know. You either have the lane momentum or you don't. Look at how far I'm playing up. I'm only specifically playing up this far because their mid is a Brood. If their mid's a Brood, an Arc Warden, like Alchemist, some farm-heavy guy that doesn't rotate, then I'm going to play like this on Slark. If they have a Quap or a Puck or a Storm Spirit, I will not do this. Think about Slark and other aggressive carries as, what is the enemy mid going to prevent me from doing? They're going to try to shut you down. Don't play into the opponent's hands, but abuse it when they have heroes that aren't going to rotate. So in games like this, where we're off to a really good start, I'm being up in their face all the time, that's almost always the cue for going Diffusal, right? Because Diffusal is, I'm going to run at you, I'm going to use it to set up my pounce, and when I hit my pounce, you're going to lose all your mana, and just this non-stop, like, suffocation, basically. So notice how 4 spells tank your health and damage. This is once you have level 6, then you just reset, right? So Slark is all about, whether it's in team fights later, whether it's in lanes now, consistently using your health pool to bully people. It's especially good around the Lotus timing because you notice, like, yeah, I used like 2 Dark Packs and pounce worth of mana, but I just went over to the Lotus, picked it up, and I'm full health, full mana. And I'm just slowly wearing this guy down. That's what I'm trying to do, is just win the war of attrition. So don't be afraid to pull the camp just to get the lane back in front of your tower. So this is the part of Slark that makes Slark Slark. I can just sit top, be chill. We don't even need to be winning by 4K in order for me to do this. We can just be winning by 1K, and this is how I want to play. Pull the lane back. It's really essential that you get it in front of your tower because a lot of offlaners are scared to walk up when you put it in front of your tower. So even though you're not necessarily going to die if it's out here, this type of stuff is absolutely essential, and then you can go farm the camps. So notice how I've stacked and then pulled, and then I'm back in time for the tower. So there's 2 heroes in my lane, so I just go back to the jungle camp. Come back and farm that. Gonna hit that diffusal timing. One thing I am doing in this lane, if you've noticed a few times, is I'm backpacking my raindrops every single time I go up to the Void Spirit. It's because I'm going to regain that health anyways, the damage I take from him in lane. And I need this for mana regen because I'm only going Diffusal. So a little cool trick you can do there where you just where you just backpack your raindrops, ensuring that you always have enough mana regen. So Slark, once he gets Diffusal, he just wants to play up in the face of the opponent, right? My teammates are smoking towards me. We want the nonstop aggression to happen. So we're going to be ramping it up here as... Notice how I haven't really left my safe lane? This is a big part of Slark's gameplay. Like, don't leave your safe lane if you don't have to, because the offlaner is going to be terrified to walk up. You're often setting up your teammates for ganks like this. And if your teammates never gank, so be it. But it is really important to note that if your teammate is a Slark and he's got a good start, he's a fantastic carry to gank for. And so one thing about Slark in the meta, like right now, why he's so popular, but it's important for future metas, right? Maybe you're watching this and it's not 7.35B anymore, is these small build-up items are so essential to making Slark viable. In the past, there was a lot of Echo Saber, but in this current patch, it's Mage Slayer or Diffusal, period. But the thing is it doesn't matter what the item is in the current patch. As long as Slark has some mid-tier build-up item that's like 2k, 3k gold, then Slark will have a place in the meta because this is what he wants to do. Hit that item timing at like 11, 12, 13 minutes, and then just shut down the opponent. So whenever these small items that Slark relies on are bad, that will naturally make Slark a less viable hero. One thing to note on Slark, when you're having a good start like this, the opponent is not allowed to go on your teammates that are tanky. If you have some offlaner, like in this case, a Viper that's tanky, you need to respond and join every single fight. Notice how I have good resources. I have my item. I see this fight happening. You will join this as Slark because you move around the map really fast. So you connect to this fight really fast. You have good turn potential, and you can ensure that like this snowball is like including your teammates, not just you, right? So notice how suddenly we've got like some crazy engagement in the bottom lane, and we end up forcing all of the enemy heroes there, and we just go right back to what we were doing, right? So think of Slark as like a jail guard, you know? You're imprisoning the opponents, and then if they try to break free, you just say, no, and then you go right back to your post. That's how I think of Slark in like the first 7 to 15 minutes. If you don't have this capability to like wrangle in the opponent, then just play your area. That's what's really important. Slark doesn't have to play like this. This is Slark's version of a free win, okay? Like this is, I'm showing you guys that this is like the picturesque, perfect Slark. You just sit top for like 15 minutes, you get your first item, you go kill somebody, or 2 people, or 3 people, and then you go straight back. So you may say, BSJ, like you said at the start of this game, you're absolutely dominating here, but you're 1-0-1 and the score's 16-5. What's really essential about this is that their offlaner has had no impact in this game. Like, I know that sounds like copium or whatever, that the carry player saying, oh, he's 1-0-1, he's absolutely carrying. But notice how the one fight this Void Spirit took part in, we just shit on him. And the rest of the time, the enemy's been reacting to us top. They've been defending, they've been putting multiple heroes in my lane, and that's exactly what Slark wants to do. It's not super fancy. Your war of attrition, forcing the opponent to use more resources than you do from minute 0, and then they just have no offlaner. So suddenly their carry had a bit of a tough lane because he's against Viper, and they have no offlaner. Now what? And that's how Slark's going to get free wins, and it does not reflect itself in the KDA. And that's what's important to note, is it's not about how many fights you're showing up to, it's about the consistent pressure that you're applying by forcing the opponent to react or to defend themselves. So in this game specifically, I go for an Orchid instead of a Mage Slayer. So what's really important about this mid-game item is that, like, how do you lock them down? So against heroes like Faces Void, if I press Diffusal, he runs away, right? Or he time walks away. Against Void Spirit, same thing. Against Broodmother, he might go over a cliff. And against Bad Rider, he presses Firefly and might get away. So they have a lot of mobility spells and a lot of heroes that can get away from the Diffusal. So I go for Orchid in order to kill these guys. Now, if it's a game where it's a bit closer and I need to prioritize living as well as killing them, so like Diffusal into Mage Slayer might be a better option. Diffusal straight into Ags might be a decent option as well, because that's like killing them with the pounces, but it's also giving me stats just to be a bit tankier. I like any mana regen item on Slark if I can. Like Diffusal Ags is nice and all, but it feels a bit lackluster if you just have mana problems in the mid game. So like having the Mage Slayer or the Orchid just feels really good right now. That might change by the time you watch this video, but Oblivion Staff as a whole is just kind of a broken item. So Orchid and Mage Slayer feel really good on Slark because it's a bunch of attack speed and mana regen. Like, what else does Slark need, right? Because he has free HP regen built in. One side note, I've mentioned this in past Slark guides. I always have a Sentry Ward. Always. Especially at nighttime, because it's so easy to deward wards at nighttime. This game's been a bit of a stomp, so you can't necessarily see me dewarding their wards, but notice how if you watch my games, I will always have a Sentry Ward in my backpack. So my next item is Disperser, and this game's pretty snowbally at this point, so we're not going to watch too much longer, but now that I have like all the kill potential in the world, or in a game where I wasn't allowed to itemize just for kill potential, I have to think about how they kill me. Like, that's a big part of Slark. So the reason I go Disperser is the one guy that can kill me with the Orchid, he's no longer a threat to me anymore. So I can just walk near him, I can just hit creeps, and then I can just walk away knowing that he's not a threat to me anymore. And this allows me to play up in their face. So whatever the guy that kills me is, if there's an item that allows me to play right next to him on the map, that's what I'm going to do. So if you notice, like, that's at 23 minutes. If we even rewind to like earlier in the game, you're going to see that I actually purposely go to Broodmother on the bottom half of the map here and like occupy his area. So the Broodmother, the one guy with like a decent game on their team, look at I'm just running around looking for him. And usually I'm supposed to be afraid of the guy with an Orchid. I'm supposed to be afraid of the guy that's built to kill me, right? But now we're just setting up to make this guy like no longer control this area, right? So think of Slark as how much territory he can control, and that's what his items are meant to do for him. So in the 7 to 15 minute window, how long can I stay in my lane? Like, how much can I counter rotate when they try to go on my teammates? In this stage of the game, who's their strongest guy on the map? Can I address him, right? Broodmother's scary for any of my team because they can't get away from the Orchid, right? But if I set up the kill, if I'm the one running at them, I can call my supports, and then suddenly the one guy on their team that's giving them any chance of coming back is just dunzo. So remember, this game's exaggerated, but I'm showing you guys what it looks like to dominate on Slark and the things you must think about in order to turn this lane win, this 3k gold lead at 10 minutes into just this at 22 minutes. Because that's what a good Slark game will do. This hero gets out of control absurdly fast, and one big slip up where you let the opponent out of their base a little bit, you let them kill your teammates while you're just farming on the map with items, or you let their powerful guy on the map maybe bully his way out of his own base. These are the things that allow them to potentially come back. And Slark is just not the hero to retake the map. He's so good at having the map and not letting the opponent get out, but when he's losing on the map, Slark is a day and night different hero, and that's such an essential part of understanding Slark. So this lane is going to have a much different approach. So because Wyvern off lane has this really strong spell, I just level Q level 1. And so I have the same starting items because they are going to cast a lot of spells on me. But notice how instead of the Wraithband, I'm actually going to go for a Bracer. I really like lanes like this where I go for a Bracer because it allows me to drop the Bracer and stick up, and it's a lot more effective use of the stick, and then the regen over time is just going to allow me to survive the lane. So you can abuse the fact that Slark is a hero with mobility, so he's hard to just like kill him in lane, and the fact that he has high built-in sustain. We don't have to be a kill guy in lane. We're against 2 ranged heroes. It's really hard to hit them. Enigma's kind of a chill 5, you know, like he's not going to really try to go on them or anything like that. So look, we're just playing the defensive aggro game. We're getting pelted by spells, by the techies. We're getting consistently queued by the Wyvern and right-clicked. Notice how we're spending no time really hitting opponents, and we're just CSing. So this is like a part of Slark that when I've been coaching people, it feels like they're unwilling to play the lane this way. Like they think Slark has to win his lane. He has to hit them for essence shift stacks. But Slark can just be a chill guy too. You know, he can just do this, where he just plays the sustain game. So that doesn't mean you always buy a Bracer, but when you're going to get harassed a lot by these spells, notice how I drop the Bracer and stick up, you can brace yourself for all of this harass and just chill. So constant defensive aggro, making sure that we understand as a hero that's main way of dissuading the opponent is by clicking them. If it's difficult for us to click them, then we just survive the lane, right? So we went for boots so that we can defensive aggro better. Like especially against ranged heroes, we'll often go boots as the first component of our treads. That's the first time I think I've clicked somebody in the last like 2 minutes. So all of our abilities there, even using Pounce to dodge the Techie's bomb. Notice how like we don't care. This is fine. As long as we're getting to level 6 without feeding and like our CS is remotely decent, then we're chilling on Slark. No need to like snowball the game every single game. That's just free wins. So defensive aggro, defensive aggro. Since I have a Bracer, I went Glove of Haste. If I had a Wraithband, I might be more likely to go for the Band of Elven Skin, just kind of balancing damage with attack speed. So what ends up happening is, at this stage of the game, eventually the 4 is going to go somewhere else. So Techies, you saw, had to TP out earlier. He's not here right now. We kind of assume he's mid, going for the rune, because it's 548. And we're going to go for this 1v2. And if you remember what I mentioned earlier, which was when your health is low, but you're accruing Essence Shift stacks, your EHP just goes up and up and up. So a lot of times when this is the health pool of 2 heroes, Slark would not win. Like the hero that's with low HP would not win, right? But as I keep hitting this guy, he's going to be losing damage. I'm gaining damage. That stick burst of health that we talked about being so essential to doing this is what allows us to work, right? So you're kind of seeing what we talked about in the last replay, which was buying that stick in order to do this. I like that Bracer for all this abusive sustain that's really added up to allow us to do that. Picking and choosing your fights is not only essential in the mid to late game on Slark, but it is also essential in lanes. If they have 2 heroes that hit you with a bunch of spells, just don't fight them, you know? Defensive aggro. But the second they're stranded like that, punish. So, I'm almost level 6, but this is the time in the game where I'm abusable, so I'm like, okay if I don't get all the CS, you know? But once again, the Techies isn't here, so we're not really getting punished, but now Venge is here. So while my guy's getting gone on, I'm just trying to get level 6. So notice how, I'm not just man on a mission, get level 6. I got it. Nicely calculated by me there to like utilize my health pool to ensure my own level 6. They thought they could harass me out of lane, but then they saw that I got level 6. And now we're like reinstating the whole pull the lane back that we talked about. Abusing equilibrium of lane on Slark is absolutely, I've said absolutely essential like 9 times this video. But notice how we're just going to keep doing the rotate between lane and jungle. Kind of just ignore the opponent like this when we don't have kill threat on them. None of our teammates are here. Just use our health pool as a resource. Pulling this camp now. It's even nicer if we do the pull camp while our creeps are tanking it, because then our ult goes off. Your ult does get canceled when you're getting hit by neutrals. So, teammates here, we can consider being aggressive, but really, like, all that means is maybe we walk at the Wyvern instead of, like, playing passively, but we don't really want to kill her. So when we're occupying the lane, but not really looking to be aggressive, that's when you go for the Mage Slayer, right? That's or the Echo Saber in future patches. That's like the mana regen survivability item. Echo Saber gives you HP, Mage Slayer gives you magic resistance. So it's like, think of it this way. Diffusal is where you're pushing them, and Mage Slayer and Echo Saber are when you're holding your area. And oftentimes, unless you have Diffusal, then it's your teammates setting up ganks. Like, it's because my Enigma was here, we killed the Wyvern earlier. Because my Tiny has rotated, we're going to try to kill the Wyvern now. I ulti ahead of time because he's got Curse and I'm pretty low, right? So I use my ulti, we get a kill with the Quap. And if none of this happens, I would just be farming back here. My tier 1 neutral, I always want the mana regen ones. So the best one is Occult Bracelet by a large margin. Then Arcane Ring. And then Royal Jelly or Shovel. And then I'd take the stat items. And then Broom Handle. So Pig Pole, then Broom Handle. So, take a nice fight here. I actually end up getting baited to go on this Viper. Like, I thought the Black Hole was going to be enough. But then we get Winter's Cursed and we get wiped. So this is a part of the game where, yes, we have fed. We have an offlane Huskar. It's getting a bit weird. We're down by 1k, so we're not in nearly as much of a snowball situation as we were before. But what do? We take a lane that's available to us because we want to finish our item, but we don't feel comfortable occupying our lane anymore. Notice how we've given up this territory. Even though they use their abilities, our offlaners are just kind of feeding, and we no longer feel like we can control that area. So we just leave. Notice how I have a sentry again, ready to de-ward whenever I walk around the map. So I notice they have a ward, and I end up missing it. So the ward was right here, but I end up missing it in this game. So kind of a new mistake by me, and it's really frustrating, but I will always try to de-ward. So in this case, like, I saw a lot of them top earlier, so anytime I think I'll get favorable numbers on Slark, I'll look to take an engagement, and I'm not afraid of their counterplay because they used Chronosphere and Wyvern Curse top. So notice how I'm still playing aggressively on the map, despite the fact that I'm not looking for kills. This is kind of just utilizing Slark's survivability, right? And so this is another case where we're just forcing reactions. Everything we're doing on the map is forcing them to defend themselves. Like, Viper's annoyed we just took his camp. Venge is like, help me, I'm getting gone on. Viper goes and helps him, and Viper strikes me. So none of this shit is super fancy, but it's very important on Slark that you're kind of just poking the bear the entire game. Now that we don't have resources, we go back to the chill part of the map. Like, you can just be this defensive guy too. You're an independent man that don't need no woman. You know what I'm saying? So they're going to go on me. I'm going to like play defensively in the fight. We're going to actually take a decent fight on our side of the map. But notice how I mentioned at the start of this guide, sometimes you're a guy that just tanks a bunch of spells, you know? And Mage Slayer goes really well with that, and same with Echo Saber. So notice how I didn't really have much impact in that fight, but I tanked a lot of spells, and I just kind of played to my limits and stayed around because I can potentially chase. So I got really frustrated by this ward. I even placed it on the high ground really lazily. That was super lazy. I should have placed it here because my courier was coming, and I would have caught the ward. That's just me being lazy. This game was pretty high tempo. No excuses, though. You can see, even as a 900 Slark game player, I'll sometimes miss the wards. So notice how we just put ourselves back on the aggressive part of the map because their abilities are on cooldown and our abilities are available. Whenever it's nighttime, if possible, I like to play off map just because I see everything and it's only wards that see me. Notice how I'm scouting for wards, taking the outposts or the watchers, constantly giving my team info, occasionally showing in waves like this, and then back off the map I'll go. I see a fight happening mid. I'll almost always want to connect. Come behind them. This is me poking the bear again, thrusting myself into them consensually. And they are going to, you know, Fushaz is going to go down. And they're going to be forced to use spells. He's going to kill my Huskar. This is where directional move is going to come into play. Lets me get out. So, in this game particularly, it's the same idea as before with Diffusal, where it's nice. It'll set up my pounces, but I'm actually leaning a lot more towards like the mid-tier survivability and aggressiveness. So like in this game, I am afraid of their burst. I am afraid of the fact that over time, I'll just take a ton of damage during the fight. So I could go Diffusal here. It's aggressive. It's nice, but I don't have a most amazing start. And I also want to tank up just a little bit more. So I'm going to go for the Ags first. So usually like Ags, Diffusal, Mage Slayer, you'll buy at least 2 of them, sometimes 3. And just kind of keep in mind what I've been saying is like, do I need a combination of survivability in the early game? Do I need the mana regen in lane from the Mage Slayer? Like at this stage of the game, am I purely worried about catching them? Am I worried about surviving? Am I worried about both? So waiting to hit that timing. We've got the Ags coming out soon. So just farming off map. Not too worried about forcing the tempo, even though we're against a hero like Faceless Void. Slark's all about hitting those timings and then constantly applying the aggression once he has them. So even though my team is looking to fight bottom, I want you guys to realize that the opponent is set up here. Like, they've probably got wards. They're probably all there. Those are the type of fights I don't like going to on Slark, necessarily, where it feels like the opponent is set up. So in this case, I want to pressure this tower and look for a trade, and maybe they react, like Wyvern just did, and then we can look to go do things on the map. So notice how we forced a reaction. We see this guy that's alone. Faceless Void died bottom. We got to be fast, right? Force the reaction, take this guy's Arcane Rune, and fuck him up, right? These are the type of plays on Slark that you look for. Don't get baited into these 5-man engagements. Look for forcing reactions to anything you are doing, and then your map mobility will do the job for you. So we're going to turn that into a tower. Important note on Slark that we're pretty much never hitting towers unless people are dead or they are showing like they were bottom. Otherwise, we're pretty much never hitting towers on Slark. That's just not what the hero does. He's all about vision, all about information, and none of his abilities make him do damage to towers. So, we don't hit towers. Even if we're winning, we just hunt people, right? We just hunt. So in this game, I go for the Shard. It's really good to look to save against Chronosphere. It's just a really good Shard game for Chronosphere and Curse. Every fight, I'm going to look to go to it. Notice how I'm heading towards the fight, but I see that it's not really going to pan out. I notice that I'm in vision. Get the D ward. Always have that sentry, boys. Some fights you just can't make it to. I was farming my Shard, I was being aggressive top, and the fight went bottom. And it's okay if my teammates take like a weird fight that I can't make it to, right? So notice how they're respawning, and I'm going to make another move that's just all about forcing a reaction. Go. Notice how I'm going to hit him like once. Look what instantly happened. TP, TP on the opponent's side. And then we just walk away. This type of play on Slark is so powerful. It gives your team so much space on the map. Just forcing these random TPs. Just space is enough to feed to the freaking Tormentor on my Huskar. He lost his Aegis to the Tormentor. In this case, the Occult Bracelet was actually better than all the tier 2 neutral items I got offered. Notice again, I'm poking. I'm like, oh, are they in their triangle? Yes. Okay, back off. What's so cool about Slark is that he can be the information for his team by, like, literally showing them people around them. Or he can be like this, where he's giving his team information by forcing reactions and scouting, like I did in the triangle. Like, oh, Wyvern's there, guys. We're fine. They're not doing anything. All good. So I see a fight breaking out. Slark does connect across the map very fast. So, like, I'm going to go across the map here. Notice how, like, I'm not afraid to connect all the way across as a hero like Slark. Doesn't work out, though. So then we just go push the mid lane. Don't be afraid to, like, go towards the fight like I have both these times. I don't end up making it to the fight because my teammates are fighting without me. But I still clear the mid wave, and the opponent's not getting any objectives off of it anyways. So we're still abusing our map mobility, swinging from lane to lane. Basically saying, like, is this advantageous? No. Go kill a creep wave. Yes. Go kill them. Right? So in this game, I wasn't really sure what item to go. But because they had so many backline heroes like the Viper, the Wyvern, the Venge, the Techies, and they also had abilities like Chrono that were really important for me to not get hit by, I ended up going for a Blink. Just combination of mobility and catching my targets. Right? So notice how anytime I force a reaction, I do something with it. So I'm going to rewind. Notice how we walk towards the Void again. Just to scare him a little bit. Just to scare him. Like, oh, posture. Nope, run away. Wyvern TP'd. So I said, hey guys, Void and Wyvern TP top. We can just run across the map. And a lot of times for this, I'll just use it as an opportunity to D-ward. So notice how this happened. I'm like, oh, there's a ward. Go kill it. One thing you need to be in the habit of as Slark is not D-warding when the opponent's missing. Because if they're missing and you go for a D-ward, that's like when they see you. So you're also your most vulnerable when you're in the way that you are most powerful, which is seeing their wards. So this is just a situation where even though we have Enigma, it's really hard to teamfight them because they have Wyvern Curse to cancel the black hole. They have Venge to cancel the black hole. They have Chronosphere. So look how we're just kind of playing the map, constantly cutting mid-wave. We're going for some mobility items so that we can pick and choose our fights. We're not showing up to every single fight, but we are going towards them, ready to help our teammates. Notice how I'm sitting back, ready to save with my shard. We see somebody alone on the map and we immediately go towards it. Now we're like, oh, look for here, look for here. There's Void here somewhere. And then I notice I'm in a ward. Notice how they're missing. So I'm going to back off from the ward. Now, since I knew they were bottom, I'm going to go clear really quickly. I see the fight happening again. I go towards it. It doesn't break out. I go back mid. You're seeing the habits of this one, right? The repetition of, am I going to this fight or not? So in these type of games, pick and choose your fights carefully. Pick and choose your targets carefully. Don't go for the survivable guys with the saves behind them. Go for the saves, right? So a lot of people may go for this Void here that's getting black holed, but this is what the Blink allows. Void goes in, highly mobile hero, and go on the Wyvern in the back, right? It is important to note that you do essence shift from your teammates. Doink, 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 doink. So, this mobility in the fight, you're seeing how much it's going to pay off. Just kind of blinking past heroes that we don't want to hit. In this case, the Viper and the Void. And then we can chase for more. You're going to see me Papega a pounce here, where I should have killed the Void. Didn't get him. But notice how when he's the only one alive and he doesn't have Chronosphere, suffocation. Suffocation. A lot of carry players would just clear the wave and go hit this tower. No, 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 no. Suffocation. Run at this guy. He's not allowed to farm. He doesn't have Chronosphere, and he doesn't have teammates. So people think I'm going to punish by pushing base. Slark punishes by corralling the opponent and not allowing them to get their items. Because Slark does not flash farm, right? So you may say, like, the BSJ, you might have missed a Rax there. It's like, it doesn't even matter to me. I just want this guy to be stuck in base. Look at this Void's game now. He's just in base with no Chrono. Like, this guy's game is ruined. Like, what does he do now? So in this case, my team's Roshing with Huskar. I'm going to be the information gatherer supplier. Notice how I'm like kind of tanking the smoke, making sure they can't contest rather than being the guy at the Rosh. Another example of forcing a reaction, just making the guy defend himself, then going to the wave. Another guy forcing him to defend himself, maybe getting a reaction, but I'm not overcommitting, not worried too much, right? Using my health pool, trying to shard save this guy and failing miserably. Notice we're utilizing our full health pool again, disengaging, trying to heal back up. And that's going to spell GG for the game. I've given you guys 2 replays, but I want to talk about one more build very quickly. I don't necessarily need to show you the replay. But in games where they have a ton of burst and a ton of disable, the way to play Slark in these games is to buy a BKB with all the normal items, whether it's Diffusal Ags or Mage Slayer Ags, and then go Moonshard plus a lockdown item like Scotty or Basher. So what that's going to do is it's going to allow you to utilize the full duration of the BKB and your ultimate to hit people. Because if you think about it in this game, if I'm not ulted or BKB'd, I'm getting hexed, I'm getting arena'd, I'm getting AA blasted. So there's going to be games where you just have to all in your ultimate. And if this game went longer, I would have a refresher after this Abyssal. I would have just gone refresher so that, you know, the 5-second ulti, 6-second BKB can now be doubled. So just think about the fact that Moonshard is a great item for Slark because it is stats by virtue of hitting them faster. So just keep in mind that if you are playing around purely hitting them in your BKB and ultimates, and those are games where you have to go BKB because you're against a hero like Disruptor, Mars, that have like these ground targeted spells that you can't pounce out of, you can't ult out of them, all that kind of stuff, then this is going to be the type of build that you lean towards going. And that's an important adjustment to make on Slark in games where you are countered. A lot of Slark's counters are heroes that prevent him from pouncing or prevent him from dark pacting their spells off. I hope you guys enjoyed this updated guide for Slark. I've had a lot of success with him recently. Thank you so much for watching. See you guys next time.